Hey YouTube. Firstly, a disclaimer, you may feel tricked in coming here with the title of this video and how I've tagged it. This is in fact about non-open source software. So if you're a Linux person by philosophy, this is probably not for you. I don't know how that works though. 10 years ago everything was software. Now we have so much software as a service, and we as Linux people pay for subscriptions for effectively online applications. So personally, I'm not an open source purist. I use Linux because it's better than Windows and Mac as far as I can tell. I came from Windows. I tried to switch to Mac and hated it from Linux. So I've been Linux for 10 years, 12 years, and happy. So here's what I'm going to talk about today is the fact that Portrait Pro, all versions run really fine under Wine. I personally now have the Studio Max version, which is great in that I'll show you the full batch mode. It can take in any number of photos and just churn through them and spit out a finished product. But I'm going to do a deep dive into showing what this product can do, and I'm doing this because like in our world, in the Linux world, usually if you're searching for skin retouching Linux, you're going to end up at a GIMP tutorial about frequency separation or something. Portrait Pro has somewhat of a bad rap sometimes because it can be overused. The goal with blemish removal and skin work is to not make somebody look like a mannequin, and it's very easy using this product to overdo it. But I really recommend you download the free download and play around with it. The only thing is, with the latest version, which is 17, I'm using a pretty recent version of Wine. I'm not using, this is Ubuntu, I'm not using what's in the repo. I'm using more recent. I think anything in the 2 dot something, I don't remember what the repo version is right now, but definitely I recommend downloading the demo of Portrait Pro and just Wine, and then go to your download directory, type Wine space setup, whatever it is, the exe file, and if it works, it works, and you're good with Wine. And if it doesn't, just upgrade your Wine and you should be fine. I think 2 dot something, there was a big change that really made it work with version 17 of Portrait Pro. So let's jump in and edit an image. I'm going to edit this image in the set of this model. There were many that I didn't even put through Portrait Pro because clearly your skin is awesome. But I chose this really close-up shot because typically we would do some retouching on this. It's kind of the world we live in, like it or hate it. Photoshopping, I'm doing air quotes here, photoshopping images to get rid of blemishes and make them more perfect is part of the industry that we're in, so be it. This is how 17 Max looks, and you can either open a single image or open a batch of images. Something I really like about Ubuntu is the open with. It's not just Ubuntu, it's a lot of things. This is 1604. I had a fight with GNOME 3, so I'm still sitting with 1604, which uses Unity. But I really love this right-click open with. So let's open this with Portrait Pro, except for the fact that it's going to open that on my monitor 1, which you can't see. So I'll drag it across. So Portrait Pro is finding the facial features, and it's finding them pretty well. It's asking me if this is male, female, or child. It's then going to drop us into a fairly obnoxious preset. It's doing some work behind the scenes, which is why the screen is a bit borked. But there is before and after with its fairly, which preset is this? Could actually be one of my presets. No, it's the standard presets. But this is why it has a bad rap. I mean, the presets are all a little bit over the top. A little bit fake. So personally what I tend to do is I'll take, I mean that's pretty good, that's no sculpt. Personally what I tend to do is I will work on one image of a person and then save a preset like this, because then when I import a batch I'll be able to say everybody in this batch, every image in this batch is a woman, and use this profile. But let's just go back to the original here and let's work through some of the things this can do. And you'll find other Portrait Pro stuff out there on YouTube. Now that you know that it works in Ubuntu, go look at those too. Or now that you know that it works under Wine. So going just into philosophy of retouching, modeling portfolio stuff is about retouching. If you are hired to do advertising work, there's kind of, you pay the model or the model is being paid. There's really no limits to what you can do, and that's when face sculpting is kind of acceptable. It's definitely not if you're doing modeling portfolio work. And if you take a photo of somebody and give them a photo that doesn't look like them, then obviously they're not going to be happy. But it's kind of interesting what it can do. It's a mathematical formula here about what the perfect face is. Face shape, eye size, or eye or location, I guess, but also eye size. Lots of stuff. Some of it's interesting, some of it's not. I don't really use this stuff. Sometimes I will do a head forward or a neck extension, and I don't really feel like that's particularly cheating. It's more doing a quick move, but this is not really where I focus my work. I'm focusing my work really in skin smoothing, sometimes in makeup, definitely in eyes, sometimes in hair, very occasionally in picture, sometimes in skin and coloring. So I think of the skin smoothing as this is just an automated frequency separation machine going on in the back here, and obviously you can just go way too far like that, but the real secret is to use these sliders and not go too far. Basically take them to the point that they start to make an impact, and also not to have the goal of an image like this where we're really working up close. My goal is not to end up with finished product. Why is that working? Thought I disconnected that. Let's see if this is private. No, that's fine. It's about keeping track of my kids' phone. Where was I? Yeah. So my goal is to do a lot of work here, but still go into GIMP and use the healing tool for the last, say, 20% of work. But it's such a time saver in terms of the other stuff. So if I just creep these up, or go max and see what the max does, see if I like anything it's doing, if it's doing anything at all. And then if it is, I'm just going to bring it up to the point that I actually like what it's doing. And the subtleties here you may not see in the YouTube resolution, but those little subtle things, there's the before and after, you can see there's definitely a difference in skin tone. So I'm not aiming for perfect. I'm still going to come in and do some final healing in GIMP, but it is doing everything face and It's head and shoulders, and if there were legs and arms in here, you can use this section to say, hey, this is skin on a leg, this is skin on an arm, so it'll do smoothing over whole body. Next, I'm going to do some work on the eyes, and it's really important to make sure that Portrait Pro has done a good job of finding all these points, especially with eyeballs. Otherwise it gets really messy really quick. But it's fairly common when using this carefully just to whiten a little bit, clean a little bit. Oh, I don't even know what this does. What does that do? I'm going to go a little bit further than default to get into this red a little bit. And then brighten the iris is awesome. Brighten the iris a little bit and sharpen a little bit. And now if you use GIMP for image manipulation, these are the kind of things that you do. This just does it faster. And I mean, things like eyes, it does really well. Again, I'm not trying to do everything with this, because if I push this all the way up, it starts to get really fake. But I probably would do something else in GIMP with the final. Just the final touch. So, the lighting and color module, again, you can horrifically overuse it. But it is a little bit interesting when used carefully. It's almost like it's the same kind of stuff you would do with dodge and burn. So I want to darken that shadow. There you go, slightly darker. Let's try the left, see how that looks. No, I don't need that. And in this case, I'm going to redden the hair a tiny bit. Give it a little bit more vibrance. Makeup. It can be used to just subtly or non-subtly. Just for me, it's about taking what's there and just highlighting a bit further. It's not really, I don't feel like it's cheating any more than dodging and burning is cheating. It's just accentuating what is already there. But again, like super subtle. Maybe in this case I'm gonna moisten lips just a little bit because they look dry, so make it more of a, yeah. So lots of fairly subtle stuff, but when you look at the before and after, you can definitely see the difference. So yeah, skin retouching in Linux is using non-open source stuff. If you can stomach that, I find it to be a really good product. In terms of support with the company, the only issues I've had with, well, I had a problem in that 17 wouldn't install before I worked out that I needed to just upgrade Wine. Thanks to my friend Shane Milton who worked that out. I've had, but you know, we're Linux people. We can't go to Windows software people and say, hey, this feature doesn't work properly. We can go and say, which I've had to do, is, hey, my license key seems to be locked up. Which happened to me when I reinstalled Wine, or it happened to me after an unsuccessful upgrade or something. It got corrupt and they just had to reset the license key, and they were super responsive and super cool. I've told them that I'm using it under Linux, and I haven't had any pushback, I guess because I've always said, hey, I know you don't support this, but just so you know, this works under Linux. So it's cool. In terms of process, it will import raw files, at least which version? The Studio version and the Studio Max version will work with raw files. I personally don't. I'm a Darktable user, and I'm coming out of Darktable with a 100% quality JPEG, or TIFF sometimes, and then saving 100% quality JPEG out of this. Now it does compress more, so I guess it's losing data. If I was really once the new GIMP comes out, that's currently a release candidate that supports 16-bit TIFFs, I may switch to uncompressed TIFFs coming out of Darktable, and then go through this with an uncompressed TIFF, and then into GIMP with an uncompressed TIFF, because the JPEG definitely does seem to squish. Let's see. Looking at the difference in file size here. I'm going from, oh weird, that was not usually how I export. That's a crappy setting. So typically it's more like this. I would start off with say a 20 meg file from my D800, Nikon D800, and I end up with a 12 megabyte file out of RAWTable, out of Portrait Pro, and then I take that into GIMP. This is all a bit lower than I'm usually working with. Bad export. But then, I mean, all that's left really is a little bit of healing brush work, and it's done. So I'm super impressed with the software. It works really well. It's a little bit clunky when you have to actually use the file manager, the wine version of the file manager, like if I do a file, and also it's over in the other. It's the one bug I find is right then I did file open and the dialog was over on my second monitor to the right, because that is from a Linux perspective monitor 1, and it tends to go to the 00 of monitor 1. But this, I mean, this select file dialog is very dated, because it's what's in wine. But just to give you an idea, let's open a batch to show you what's going on there. How do I open a batch like this? Let me close this. I'm pretty much, I'm usually doing it with right click, which I really like. Okay, here we go. So the open batch dialog is something like this. So say I want to take all of these, and this is a person that I've already worked with, then I would say all faces are female and select the preset for this female. I turn off autosave unless I'm really sure that it's going to do a good job. But I mean, like on this profile shot, there's a chance I'm going to have to go in and move things around to find the eyeballs. But it goes through, it finds the faces, then it processes the faces, then you can go in and review if you want to. Go in and review how well it's done, and then after that, go back to that. Change settings, and say autosave, and it'll just ripple through and save. My personal workflow with this is, as long as I have a preset that I already know is going to work for this person, I just have it autosave, and then if any of it's bad, I'll go back and manually redo that single image. I just find it faster. It's a bit clunky. This whole thing's a bit clunky. The fact that this is the only place I can save images, apart from going into a specific image and saving it, like, really there should be a save all button over here, but there isn't. But this is what you get for the extra. The difference between the $60 version and $120 version is this batch operation. This batch dialog is more that you can say, you can select a bunch at the same time, and then it's sequentially going to open one, and when you close it, it opens the next, which is not as good. In terms of memory management, I'm going to kill this. In terms of memory management, it's not very heavy. Close batch, yeah. Come on, what are you doing? So say I had, before I got this batch system, I would say highlight up to 5, and right click and open with Portrait Pro, and it did a fine job. I was basically just letting it churn through and do all the work of 5, and then I'd go through and really quickly just select the preset and save, select the preset, save. So there you go. Turns out in this open source world, a really good way to do skin retouching is not open source. Oh, I did change the face there. Did not mean to do that. Anyway, there you go. That's all I got. Hope this is useful. Bye.